thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your co-host, Joe Irado, and with me, as always, is a guy so cool he has inside jokes with complete strangers, Mike Vandebogard.
Thanks, Joe, and thank you for everyone for tuning in to Locations Unknown. This will be our last episode for the summer, so
not forever, just the summer.
Yeah, not forever. We will be back.
Listening.
Yeah, please don't stop listening. We will be back in the fall. We always kind of take a summer break. And I guess this is the end of season 2, Joe. Yeah. So the time sure flies. We also have an exciting promotion running right now. We're planning to make a custom set of playing cards, and we're asking all of our listeners to send in any cool photos they have from any of the national parks you visited, and we may select one of your photos to be on the deck of playing cards. So head over to our Facebook page. We have a post on kind of the rules and what you need to do. So, we urge everyone to send in all the pictures that they have.
Yeah, and just give us information on it as well if it's not obvious. So if you have a picture, just tell us what park it is, maybe time of year, just some basic information.
Other than that, not a lot of other announcements. We still have a lot of hats and stickers available for sale. So if you want to help the show out, head over to our Facebook page and visit our store. We appreciate all the help we can get. Any updates on your end, Joe?
Nope, just looking forward to a summer, and
I know,
as short as it may be, and then we'll get back into season 3.
Yeah, season 3. We've got a lot of cool cases coming up and some very interesting guest interviews that are in the works.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, everybody, let's gear up and get out to explore Locations Unknown. Deep in the Nevada desert lies a location that's been the center of dozens of conspiracy theories since the 1940s. Stories of alien autopsies, reverse-engineered alien spacecraft, and even the faking of the 1969 moon landing are talked about to this day. This location is so secret, it wasn't officially acknowledged by the government until 2013, 58 years after it was established. Stepping foot inside its perimeter or flying into its airspace can result in death. Join us this week as we try to unravel the mystery and intrigue surrounding Area 51. Area 51 is in the state of Nevada, located about 120 miles northwest of Las Vegas, somewhere between mile marker 29 and 30 along Nevada's extraterrestrial highway, that's State Highway 375, and it lies on an unmarked dirt road. Although no buildings are visible from the asphalt, the track leads to Groom Lake, or Homey Airport, and it's called on civilian aviation maps. For those in the know, it leads to a military base with many unofficial names: Paradise Ranch, Watertown, Dreamland Resort, Red Square, The Box, and The Ranch, Nevada Test and Training Range, Detachment 3, Air Force Flight Test Center, Detachment 3 AFFTC, and the more commonly known Area 51. Area 51 was established on April 12, 1955, by CIA officer Richard Bissell, who was overseeing the development of the U-2 plane. He first seized the site that would become known as Area 51 while on an aerial scouting mission. Bissell, along with 3 others, including Colonel Osmond Ritland and Kelly Johnson, director of Lockheed Corporation's Skunk Works, agreed that the area would make an ideal site for testing the U-2 training pilots, and request the Atomic Energy Commission add the area to its real estate holdings in Nevada. In July of 1955, the CIA begins using Area 51 to develop the high-altitude U-2 reconnaissance plane. Other aircrafts are also tested at the site later, including the Oxcart, which is a supersonic reconnaissance A-12 aircraft, precursor to the SR-71 Blackbird, and the F-117 stealth ground attack jet. So we said a lot of airplanes, but if you're not into planes, this is that really, really cool flat black plane where it's got those wings that end kind of in just straight lines, and the pilots fly so high they basically have to wear spacesuits.
The SR-71, it's I think one of the fastest jets that the Air Force had. I think it flew over 2,000 miles per hour, and in altitudes of like 80,000 feet.
It can make like a bombing run. It can like take off from like Nevada, get to the Middle East, and come back in like 9 hours or something like that, right? Is it or something even crazier than that? I don't know if you want to look it up while we're going, but it's like insane. It can circumnavigate the planet pretty quick.
The Air Force only used it for a little while, and then later on used the U-2 because I guess the SR-71 is just, it's really expensive to fly and it burns through fuel really quick.
I would imagine.
Yeah, and the other really cool plane that was developed there that I'm sure everyone has seen before is the F-117 stealth fighter. Mm-hmm. That's kind of it looks like from the bottom, if you saw it flying over you, it looks kind of like a V.
Yep.
With kind of a jagged end on it, and it's one of them got shot down in the mid-90s. I remember that was big news for like a few weeks over Kosovo or somewhere.
Yeah,
they were used heavily in Operation Desert Storm.
They typically fly them during air shows. You'll see one flying over.
I've seen the F-117 fly over. I've also seen the bomber that looks like just a flying like Batwing.
Yep.
I've seen that one. Yeah, they're really cool. So yeah, Area 51 has been any really highly classified jet that's developed by the Air Force has come out of Area 51, including the newest fighter, the F-22. So, and who knows what they're working on now.
I know, right? All right, I'll continue on. So that was July 1955. I just wanted to give a side cart because we just talked about a ton of different airplanes. So in 1974. Skylab astronauts inadvertently took photographs of Area 51. The images are reviewed by the National Photographic Interpretation Center, that's the NPIC, and then removed from the rolls of the film and stored in a restrictive vault. So when they were up in Skylab, yeah, exactly. Accidental reconnaissance. On May 13th in 1989, KLAS, which is a CBS affiliate in Las Vegas, reporter George Knapp interviewed Bob Lazar, who exposes details about Area 51. Lazar claims to be working with physicists trying to back-engineer a downed alien spacecraft. The interview generates public interest in the base. And if there's a really cool documentary called Hangar 1 on Netflix that if you're into this stuff, you probably have already seen it if you're into this stuff, but if you're not super into it but want to learn more, it's really cool because they use... it's a little bit of those guys, the conspiracy guys who go, I think, sometimes too far, but they have a lot of documents that are declassified government documents or government documents that are legit that make statements like this, and they interview people. It's really, really interesting stuff.
Well, and Bob Lazar has a documentary film out on Amazon too right now.
Ooh, I have not seen that one. I know he's mentioned in Hangar 1. I think I'm gonna watch that for sure now.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Obviously, some of the claims made in it are questionable. So, go in it watching it kind of with a skeptical mind, but it's still, it's still really interesting. Bob Lazar also was on Joe Rogan's podcast, I don't know, a year ago. So he was on there for about 3 hours. So really, really interesting interview. he actually feels that his life is still in danger to this day from the federal government. So
I'm sure it is, because I mean, technically, if you're a contractor working for the government and you're under, a gag order, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. But at the end of the day, if you're protecting state secrets and you reveal those, I mean, I think that puts you at risk, whether it is for jail time or something even worse. Like I said, I'm not giving an opinion and if that's okay or not, but I can imagine that I would feel the exact same way. Like that anytime I could all of a sudden have a heart attack and be completely healthy.
Well, yeah, and he back in the day, he had claimed to have taken a element from Area 51 that hadn't been discovered and added to the periodic table yet. And then later down the road, I think either in the no, not unobtainium. I can't remember the name now. But the element actually down the road in the late 90s or 2000s was actually then discovered and added to the periodic table.
So does he have proof that he had it prior to the discovery of it? Or
I believe he does. And then the federal government raided his house, or they raided his office or where he worked or where his house was, and looking for it. So you got to watch the documentary on Amazon.
I'm totally going to watch that right after we're done recording.
It's really interesting. You kind of go down the rabbit hole of a lot of stuff we're going to talk about in this episode in a little bit. So,
all right. Well, now we're up to September 8th, 1994. The U.S. Air Force issues a report stating that the wreckage recovered in Roswell, New Mexico in July 1947, often referred to as the Roswell Incident, consisted of a smashed part of balloons, sensors, radar reflectors from classified government project called Project Mogul. And I actually went through Roswell last year. I was going on a trip, and we went to the museum there. It's actually pretty cool. April 2000, a Russian-built satellite reveals views of Area 51. I'm sure that made everyone very happy that the Russians were taking pictures of it and then releasing the information. August 15th, 2013, the CIA publishes declassified documents which officially acknowledges for the first time that Area 51 is a secret U.S. military site following the FOI request filed in 2005. The declassified documents concern the history of the U-2 and the A-12 Oxcart aerial surveillance program that were constructed and tested in Area 51. The documents claim the site's secret status was a way to keep information from the Soviets rather than to cover up an alien encounter.
Makes sense.
It makes sense. And I remember when that happened, Mike, I think we were still working together at Spalding Clinical. And when it happened, we're like, hey, like they've been saying this place doesn't exist our entire lives. And they're just like, yeah, it exists. And we're like, and I felt like at the time it was not as big of a deal publicly as it should have been. I mean, it was the first time in our lifetime the government admitted to like a secret military base that like say what you want about conspiracy theorists, but they were 100% right for 50 years about this thing. And then everyone's like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, no, that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty big news. I think probably a lot of people though were like, yeah, tell us something we don't know. We know it's there.
See, but that's where like guys like me, like I love those stories, but I do remain a skeptic. I love conspiracy theories. I really do. And I like listening to the information. I like playing with the idea of that, but I'm very skeptical. I take it all with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to acknowledge that there are things that are happening that they do keep secret. And there's a fine line between going too far one way and then the other way we're like, no, there's none of that going on. And I like to think I'm more like middle leaning, more conspiracy.
Yeah, I always keep a very skeptical mind, but you gotta show me facts, and evidence.
And that's why when they came out and said it, I was like, "What?"
But as a person who loves shows like The X-Files, Area 51 is right up my alley.
Yeah,
it's in so much pop culture too. So
yes, 100%. All right, so now we're at December 8th of 2013 at the 36th annual Kennedy Center Honors. U.S. President Barack Obama became the first president to use the phrase Area 51 in public while honoring the actress Shirley MacLaine, who has long been vocal about her interest and belief in UFOs and extraterrestrial. That's actually pretty crazy to me that no sitting president has even uttered the phrase Area 51 until Barack Obama.
I think he probably felt comfortable doing it since the CIA kind of already admitted it existed.
I'm sure it was I'm sure it was a discussion that had like, hey, can we talk about this thing now? Because like you assume that the presidents are all briefed on the reality of stuff when they come into office.
I think they're probably, and this will go back into that documentary that you're going to watch. I think there's some information that's so top secret that it's, even a president doesn't get briefed on it unless they specifically seek it out.
I believe that 100%. I believe that. And this is where I go back and forth on my, like, how do I feel about that stuff? Because there is a big part of me that says, that's great. Like, I don't have faith in people controlling all of my life, but I do believe there's things out there that you just expect other people to know. And I'll put it in a simpler term. I drive across bridges all the time. I don't want to spend my life worrying about the integrity of the bridges I'm driving over because I'll go insane. You know what I'm saying? So if there's things out there like extraterrestrials, or there are governments trying to kill us, and there's people that are working on things that are stopping that, and it's so secret that our enemies can't know. It's like, you know what? I don't need to know about that, and I'm just glad they're doing it. But on the other side, okay, are they overextending their bounds into, individual liberties and rights of people, not even just Americans, but like, are we doing things that we shouldn't be doing to
unethical
people? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I also worry too, obviously I believe that, governments need to have, things like, military projects kept secret in development. They don't want other countries figuring out what they're working on. But I also get worried about when you have these like black budgets where there's no congressional oversight over what these shadowy departments of the government are doing. So I have some issues with that, but I also see the reason why some of this stuff is so highly classified. You don't want, the Russians or the Chinese or, other adversaries knowing what you're developing out there, because you want to have the upper hand.
Well, look at the raid on bin Laden. Those helicopters were those were actually developed at Area 51.
Exactly. We have helicopters that you can't hear.
That's insane. That's insane. And so you have these things, and the only reason we know about that today is because they crashed one.
Yeah.
And we're talking about our government, and this is again where I go back and forth. Our military is so good, especially when you get in that type of level, that what they do that raid in 30 minutes? They flew in there, crashed a helicopter, so that it didn't go as planned, and in 30 minutes they got bin Laden, they got all the intel, blew up the crashed helicopter so they couldn't reverse, or it'd be harder to reverse engineer, and got out of there. Like, that's insane. And that's why we know about these helicopters, because everyone's like, we've never seen anything like this before. And we never would have if there wasn't an accident.
So it really is the technology that's come out of Area 51. If you're, even if you're, you want a smaller military budget, things like, I get those point of views. I'm just looking at a purely technology standpoint. Mm-hmm. It truly is amazing, some of the technology that's come out of that, location.
Yeah.
So it's just cool.
It's cool and terrifying. I think that's the best way to put it.
It's cool and terrifying.
It really is.
Yes.
It's like I don't want it to stop because I love the conspiracy theories, but I also want it to stop.
Right.
All right. So I'll go on from there because I'm sure we'll have many of these sides because this is a really fun topic.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So April 2nd, 2014, in an appearance on ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live, Clinton jokes that while he was president, he asked aides to investigate what the government knew about UFOs and Area 51. He says, first I had people go look at the records in Area 51 to make sure there were no aliens down there. So that plays into what you were saying, Mike, about how I'm sure, when Trump comes into office, they're not like, now here's all the info on aliens, here's all the info. Like, it's just too much to take in unless that something's going on globally or whatever happens that it becomes a necessity. Another good example would be the movie Independence Day, when President Whitmore, my favorite president.
He was a good movie president.
He was my favorite president in real life. No, I'm just kidding. But like the whole idea is he's like, there aren't aliens, right? And they're like, and they take him down there, and because it wasn't relevant till they actually came back. All right. Yeah. So July 11th, 2019. Now we're getting up to very recent.
Yeah.
And this was one of my favorite movements.
This was funny.
This was hilarious. More than 1.5 million people say they will attend a Facebook event titled Storm Area 51. They can't stop us all, pledging to raid Area 51 in a quest to see them aliens. The post suggests that people run onto the site on September 20th, 2019 at 3 a.m. So the idea was everyone sign up, show up, and just start running and see how far we get. And
not, that's not really a recommended plan and a facility where they're authorized by legally to shoot and kill anyone that comes within the perimeter.
Yeah, it would have been a massacre of major proportion. I think, did we do it on our Facebook page where I mapped out like kind of like the area and how far, and someone made a plan that they would have to like have, and it was obviously a joke because the guy said they're going to initially push in like Naruto runners first,
I think that's from an anime cartoon show.
Those guys that run with their arms straight behind their back, and it looks really weird. My kids did it for a while, and I made them stop it. But like it was obviously a joke, but there were people that thought it was real as usual. So then on September 20th, 2019, approximately 200 people out of the 1.5 million show up outside the gates Area 51 for the raid, and 2 people were arrested, and there was 1 alcohol-related arrest, and a Canadian citizen is arrested for indecent exposure. And one sole hero in the group came close to crossing and is briefly detained and released at the scene.
So yeah, it kind of fizzled out at the end. I figured it would. A lot of people just joined up because it was funny.
Which for the best, because legitimately, if cars started driving there, I could only imagine there's minefields or whatever. It could have been really bad for the people.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't find out. It wasn't smart, and you had a lot of the government officials really warning people, like, seriously, like, you can't come inside here, or it's not gonna end well.
Yeah, it's like ha 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 ha, funny joke, but for real, don't come in here, we'll kill you.
Yeah.
So this is some really, really cool information. So the size of Area 51, and this is all based on release documents, now satellite footage, because you can go on Google Maps and now see this. It's no longer blocked out, and you can find the pictures.
Parts of Area 51 are part of larger, Air Force facilities that have been acknowledged for a while.
Yes.
So
yeah. So it is part of the Nevada Test and Training Range, which is 4,531 square miles, or was that 2,899,840 acres?
Yeah.
So if Area 51 and the larger test ranges were a national park, it would rank as the 7th largest, which is bigger than Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, and Glacier National Park. So the area is huge.
It's massive.
Which leads into more conspiracy theories.
And they keep adding to the size of it. So you'll find every decade or so they take over more land to kind of push the boundary out farther.
Well, as we settle more areas, you need to keep buildings from going near it, I guess. I mean, that if you're really thinking about it, you don't want a high rise to go up near it. And
there were a couple mountain ranges, very far from the base that you could still see the facility from, and I think they eventually took over that land so that you can't get up there now to see that.
Yeah.
But for a long time you could drive up there and we're talking many miles away, but you could off in the distance kind of see stuff at the base. So
yeah, and you're being watched whether you know it or not in that area.
Oh yeah.
So visitors per year? We don't know because it's a highly classified government facility.
I do know, interesting fact is the people that work at Area 51 are flown in from Las Vegas on kind of an unmarked airline jet.
Okay, so they don't drive there. They actually take off from the airport and then go land at the strip there.
I mean, I'm sure there are some people that probably commute in by car maybe, but I've seen this on one of the documentaries that most of them fly in on an unmarked jumbo jet from Las Vegas.
That's crazy. Yeah, so you wonder how the daily employees get there, or if it's because like you said, it's a bigger part of a normal base. So it's the separate part. I could imagine when you're that secretive, again, I think about Independence Day. Granted, this is a Hollywood movie, but that scientist like lived there. Like, he didn't leave. And I could imagine that there's certain projects where, like, okay, we're going to work on this project. You're underground for 4 years. Like, you don't leave this building because we're working on this major thing, and you're going to stay here. And
Yeah.
I
The Bob Lazar documentary, I can't remember if he came in and out every day or if he was there for 2 weeks and off for 2 weeks. I think it might have been that. But he said, now this is all what he said, who knows if it's true or not, but he said most of the jobs there are very compartmentalized. So you only knew what this little piece that you were working on, and you didn't know how it fit into the larger scheme of things.
Yeah, and that's I'm going to call that normal, because I mean there are like celebrities that build houses that do that. They'll like hire several different contractors that do different sections to keep it secretive. So like the fact that you have the government doing super top secret stuff, absolutely believe that, where it's like, hey, you're going to work on this little thing. You're not allowed to ask questions. You're not allowed to poke around. We're going to be watching over your shoulder the whole time, and you're going to get the hell out.
Well, and he said that it was mainly done too to prevent, if one person gets compromised, they only know about the little thing they're working on. And they actually, with some of the workers, they actually kind of mixed in bogus projects and documents to kind of, so some people might not have been working on real things or working on something bogus to kind of, really throw off people to what's going on in the grand scheme of things. So really interesting. Again, you got to watch that documentary.
I'm going to. Like, literally, I'm going to put it on after this because I have some work to catch up on, and I'm going to watch it while I do that. So, all right, so we have some interesting historical facts about the area. The U.S. government's official name for Area 51 is the Nevada Test and Training Range, which is a unit of the Nellis Air Force Base. Today, it's used as an open training range for the U.S. Air Force. So it's like you said, it was like kind of hiding in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
So it is restricted to the public, obviously, and has armed guards patrolling the perimeter. It's also impossible to enter the airspace above without permission from air traffic control. And that's where you get into, I would love to look up, I don't know if you have, Mike, if there's been like any like dumb idiot Cessna pilot that just accidentally flew into it. And I think this is, again,
they don't even let you get close.
Well, and that's the thing too. This is where you get into, we're still talking about people here. And it would be very easy for those people to have been shot down, but you have people probably manning this up. They probably were very imminently about to pull the trigger from like a surface to air missile on this guy and like, hey, dude, turn around now. Like, you will be dead if you do not.
You can go on YouTube and listen. There's a lot of, there have been people in small commercial aircraft like Cessnas that have gotten too close, and they first get warnings from, the air traffic control, and then fighter jets get scrambled, and a lot of times they'll force you to land, and then they'll take you into custody and question you.
Sure.
And then, usually you get released, but yeah, it's serious. You don't want to fly into their airspace.
Well, you think about how many of those stories where it's accidentally got too close. I would bet a number of those were counter operations. Like, it
could have been. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, like, that's where there's great pictures of, was it Ronald Reagan in Russia? And he's taking pictures with tourists, and one of the tourists is Vladimir Putin. Like, because he was KGB at the time. Like, he wasn't president, but like he's got like tourist shorts on, a little photograph. Like, he's got a camera, and the story goes that the Secret Service knew who all the KGB were, and they like, it's kind of like this dance like the governments do to play along. So I would be very surprised, like, oh, I'm just a local pilot that got a little too close, and like it's like, no, it's probably a KGB guy that. Again, the dance continues. They let him go, but they know exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
So, Area 51 is still expanding, as you said, Mike. It's been growing something which true believers may attribute to the need for more UFO parking spaces. Business Insider points out that satellite imagery of Area 51 displays significant construction within the area between 1984 and 2016, including new runways and hangars. Business Insider also posts that it could mean that the B-21 Raider stealth bomber is being tested at the site, or this is what they want us to believe. Area 51 has appeared in numerous movies and TV shows, including Independence Day, Fantastic Four, Zero Dark 30, and Indiana Jones, to name a few. And that was the newest Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The one that people hated, but I enjoyed it. for entertainment.
It was okay.
It was for entertainment. I look at movies for entertainment value, and it entertained me. Plus the part where the nuke goes off and he survives it inside of a refrigerator.
Pretty ridiculous.
I still watch that clip every now and then. I'm like, really? Who allowed this to happen? All right. Sharing a border with Area 51 is the Yucca Flat region of the Nevada test site, which was the location of 739 of the 928 nuclear tests conducted by the U.S. Department of Energy. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah. So obviously Area 51 is in such a remote region that they did a lot of the nuclear testing back in the day there. And I saw a documentary that back in like the 50s and 60s, you could go to Las Vegas, they would, and then you could do kind of tourism around watching a nuclear explosion go off.
Oh, so it was a lot of surface detonation, not subsurface?
Yeah, surface detonation. Okay. Yeah, so you could see them from Las Vegas. So
that's cool and
kind of cool
and terrifying.
Cool and creepy. Can you imagine seeing a nuclear explosion go off?
See, that just scares me in general, because we talk about like all the things in our lives, like synthetic foods and things like that, and I really feel like the growing cancer stuff is directly related to the world deciding that we're just going to detonate nuclear weapons to flex to other countries.
I mean, it's definitely it's not great for the local or regional environment.
Well, and they talk about you can date wine. Like if you have like old wine, because they sell it, and if it was bottled and corked pre the discovery of nuclear weapons, that's how they tell if it's legit. Because
really?
Because ever since the nuclear age, like there is like whatever the radium is detectable on everything. Because when you detonate a nuke in the atmosphere, and we've done thousands, but different countries, like it goes everywhere. Yeah. Like the fallout, like it's apparently not safe. It's not unsafe.
It's not great.
It's not great, but like you can actually detect. So they say like you can actually draw out wine then and go, oh, it doesn't contain this nuclear isotope, but everything since then does. So you can tell if it's faked. So it's some interesting stuff. So lead and silver were discovered on the southern part of Area 51 in 1964 and 1864, excuse me, and mined up to 1918, and then again after World War II until the early 1950s. So that was just some random facts. Elevation of the area about 4,400 feet. So with that, we'll go to a word from our sponsors, and then we'll jump into the timeline.
This episode of Locations Unknown is sponsored by Payoff.com. You've tried balance transfers in budgeting, but high interest rates and unrelenting bill cycles make it almost impossible to get out of credit card debt on your own. Instead of another new savings technique, you need a clear path out of debt, and that's what a payoff loan can do. A payoff loan is a personal loan backed by member-centric credit unions designed to help you pay off your credit cards. With rates as low as 5.99% APR and loan amounts up to $35,000, there's no hidden fees, and there's personal customer service support from Payoff to help you reach your financial goals. Some of the benefits of a payoff loan may also include potential credit score boost, 1 monthly payment, and savings from lower interest rates. So go to payoff.com/locationsunknown to learn more. Checking your loan rates won't affect your credit score. So try something new. Pay off your credit card debt with Payoff. NMLS ID number 1396805. Not all applicants may qualify. Loans only available within the United States, and loans are not available in all states. Payoff works with lending partners who originate the loans. Additional terms, conditions, and eligibility requirements may apply. More information is available at payoff.com/locationsunknown. You can go out on Google and research Area 51 conspiracies. You are going to get dozens and dozens and dozens of strange things people think are going on there. I tried to distill it down to the top 10. They're not ranked in any specific order, but they're kind of the main conspiracies people talk about when they talk about Area 51.
Oh, this is going to be our most controversial episode, which is hilarious. But people are going to be pissed, Mike, that you left out some detail, some conspiracy that's totally 100% true.
So,
it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait. Please send all your emails to us.
Yeah, no, send them to Mike because then then he'll tell me about them.
So number one, or our first conspiracy is, one that we've already kind of alluded to here, the reverse engineering of alien spacecraft. So like Joe mentioned earlier, back in 1989, a man named Bob Lazar claimed that he had been hired to work briefly as a researcher at a part of Area 51 called S4, which was so secretive that he and other workers were taken there in a bus with blacked out windows so they couldn't figure out the route. So he claims that in these hangars at S4, he saw flying saucers, apparently of extraterrestrial origin, and they were powered by antimatter reactors fueled by a mysterious reddish-orange substance called element 115. And that was the element I was talking about earlier. Yeah, I forgot what the name of it was.
I've heard of that. Yes, I have heard that.
But I believe it's an actual element now. They discovered it later on, but he was talking about element 15, decade or two before it was, actually discovered. So, maybe that does give him some credibility.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes on to say the device generated a gravity wave so powerful that if you threw a golf ball in its direction, the ball would bounce off. Lazar recounted. He said the government was attempting to reverse engineer the UFOs in an effort to use the technology for military purposes. Lazar said he was fired from the job after he was caught taking friends out into the desert at night so they could watch test flights of the captured saucers. Lazar's Area 51 credentials later come into question, and you'll learn in the documentary that I believe he worked at Los Alamos Labs, and he went to college. I can't remember where he went to college, but later on, when he came out with this interview in the late 80s, people tried to go back and look up his credentials, and they weren't there. So, you have two: either he totally lied about his, background and never, went to the college and never worked at Los Alamos, or people went back and just scrubbed the records of his existence.
That's again where it's you get in this weird, and this is where I'm constantly in this battle in my own mind of, you have a guy who has credibility. He's saying things that are a little too accurate to be made up, but also sound a little crazy, then gets somewhat backed up. And I don't doubt within, a shadow of a doubt that, especially back before the digital age, you could completely erase someone's existence very easily because it was literally on paper. So if the government goes in and seizes records of his college history, his credentials, everything, just literally destroys them, then you can say this person exists, and when people go to look up, be like, yep, they're right. There's no documentation here. And I was looking up element 115, and it was officially discovered in 2003 in Russia with it was a joint American and Russian scientist. It's called Moscovium, so obviously based after Moscow. And you look at a lot of those radioactive elements. There's like Einsteinium, there is Neptunium, plutonium. It's all kind of named after, around where it was discovered. So they said it's extremely radioactive and has a half-life of 0.65 seconds. But it's 115 in the periodic table. So,
Bob Lazar talked about this element back in 1989. So, over a decade before it was actually discovered. So that's interesting. And, the larger notion of the government reverse engineering, equipment, I definitely think, they probably, if they capture an enemy fighter jet, like an enemy Russian fighter jet, they're reverse engineering it.
100%.
If aliens do exist and we do have their spacecraft, I mean, it would make sense that they would try to reverse engineer it to get, technology from it that's probably far, far advanced than anything we have.
Yeah. I mean, it's a matter of, are we capturing it or are we working with some sort of species?
Right.
And there's that whole thing going. And do you talk about that at all?
I believe I do.
Okay, then I will wait because I have comments on that.
Okay, so that's the first conspiracy. This is one that everyone talks about. So the first three are pretty universal when you think of Area 51. So the second conspiracy is the interrogation. It's an interrogation center for captured aliens. So obviously that goes hand in hand with, reverse engineering the spacecraft, because if you're capturing their spacecraft, you would assume that there would be aliens, flying them around. So they kind of say that Area 51 is the Guantanamo Bay for aliens, which sounds terrible.
It does sound terrible.
Yeah, but and then they go, the difference is the detainees are extraterrestrial, and they don't have to wear orange jumpsuits or listen to loud heavy metal rock when they're trying to sleep.
It's also one of my favorite jokes, and not joking about what actually happens, but I love saying that Guantanamo Bay sounds like a ton of fun unless you I'm sorry, I screwed it up now, so I ruined it, but it's waterboarding at Guantanamo Bay sounds like a ton of fun unless you know what both of those things are. Did we hear that one?
Exactly.
Because it sounds like it's a water park.
Yeah, right? So this conspiracy also goes back to Bob Lazar. So he actually said, and he says this in his documentary and in the interview, he recalled that while being guided down a hallway at S4, he momentarily glanced through a small window and caught a glimpse of a small gray extraterrestrial standing between two men dressed in white coats. Before he could get a better look, he was pushed by a guard who told him to stop looking and keep moving. So, Bob claims to, and I think he mentions in his documentary that he's seen extraterrestrials there several times. And there's also another self-styled whistleblower that we only know by the name of Victor. He also claimed to have worked at Area 51 and said in a 1997 radio interview that he had witnessed an alien interrogation and even provided a grainy video which supposedly shows a human officer trying to communicate telepathically with a extraterrestrial pilot who had been shot down by the U.S. military. So you got some of these people who, questionable claims that really no way you could ever prove what they're saying.
So this is one of the ones that that doesn't jive with me. And just the idea that we're like capturing and interrogating aliens, because I don't know. I feel like you have, let's go off the basis that yes, there's this advanced species of aliens that are not from this planet that somehow are able to travel here in spacecraft that's and then all of a sudden just us as people with no technological advancements are able to capture them and interrogate them.
Yeah.
Like it just seems far-fetched that, and this is where I'm going to go again. I'm going to give myself some room here for conspiracy. Let's say this is all real. I don't view it as we're interrogating them, and that's where I'd like to think that we're working with them if they exist, because the ability, if they're that technologically advanced, imagine a SEAL team unit in America versus like that tribe in Africa that's untouched. They have spears, like they don't even know it, or it's like outside of India. It's an island that they basically protected. Like no one's allowed to go there. They've been completely cut off.
Yep.
Now those people capturing a SEAL team for interrogation. That's kind of how I look at it. Right. It's like, no, that wouldn't happen.
Or shooting down an F-22.
Exactly. Like, no, that doesn't happen. Like, and this is, again, people get mad at me. Now, if we randomly crashed an airplane there and for whatever reason we were debilitated and they got one of our guys, okay, maybe. But then are you going to go from spears to technological advancements, or are they just going to kill the guy? Yeah. So that's this, and this is where I think a lot of these alien conspiracy theories actually, when you really, really dwell on them, they can kind of make sense. This one where we're capturing and interrogating aliens doesn't fit for me. No, that's my personal stance. I'm sure people disagree, but I'm just saying that's my personal stance on it.
No, and that would be a logical explanation, to counter that conspiracy. Yeah. And
I always try and bring logic into conspiracy theories.
So that's one of the conspiracies, kind of piggybacking off of that conspiracy. So the other really big conspiracy about Area 51 is there's autopsies of dead aliens taking place at Area 51. So in this kind of goes back into the 1990s pop culture. There, the show X-Files, had alien autopsies on it. And there actually were a couple of videos released back in the 90s that claimed to have been real alien autopsies. One of them was a 17-minute black and white film that surfaced and purported to show a team of humans in white biohazard protection suits cutting open and removing the organs from what appeared to be a tiny alien corpse. This footage aired on TV in multiple countries, and copies became popular mail order item. Even though skeptics noted that the team performing the dissection seemed to be incredibly clumsy with their surgical tools. Years later, the film's producers released a documentary sequel in which they admitted to faking the autopsy, though they claimed to have done it only to replace genuine footage that had been damaged. So you can see...
Yeah, I've seen that video, and it looks totally fake.
Yeah, and you can see some people have been trying to, make money off of these conspiracies.
Sure.
And they say it's fake, and then they say, well, it's just because the real footage was lost. But some people still believe it, and there was actually another purported Area 51 autopsy video that surfaced in 2012, and it was called Alien from Area 51. The alien autopsy footage revealed, which entices the curious with a warning graphic material label. Another bit of suspect footage surfaced in 2014, purportedly showing a partially dissected 4-foot-tall alien with a severed insect-like head. So there's lots of these videos out there in circulation. You just gotta watch them and take them with a grain of salt.
I've seen most of them. I mean, if there's some out there that I haven't seen, whatever. But I don't think that.
It's interesting science fiction.
Yeah, they don't look real. And I'm not saying that I don't think that that's a possibility that if an alien ship crashed and they perished, and of course we would try and figure out the biology and the anatomy of these things. I just think the videos are all fake.
Yeah. So moving on to our next conspiracy, a lot of people think Area 51 is the headquarters of the secret one world government. So out of the four we've talked about, I think this one is, at least a little more based in reality. Yeah. People believe that Area 51 is a convenient place to pull all the threads of a one world government. So it's remote, it's highly top secret. And that's why a lot of people speculate that the test range is the logical place for the location of the Majestic 12. And if you buy into the narrative laid out by an anonymous author on the conspiracy site educateyourself.org, a secret government committee that has been laboring in the shadows for more than 6 decades to work out an arrangement for a one-world government in which the planet would jointly be ruled by human and extraterrestrial elites. And this is interesting. I always go back to the X-Files because I grew up watching that show. Mm-hmm. But throughout the X-Files, you have the undertones of kind of a one world government. These guys, in a dark room smoking cigarettes, kind of pulling the strings of everything. Yeah. And there's different representatives from all the big countries, and they're working alongside aliens to eventually, take over the world. And I think in the X-Files, they were trying to help the aliens take over humans, but at the same time developing a vaccine that would kill the aliens. So, an interesting theory. They go on to say the Majestic 12 supposedly started as a blue ribbon panel of scientists and military leaders created by President Harry Truman in 1947, shortly after the crash of an alien spacecraft near Roswell, New Mexico. As the story goes, the Majestic 12 somehow eventually made contact with the aliens and brokered a meeting between them and President Dwight Eisenhower that in turn resulted in a deal with which the U.S. government got extraterrestrial technology in exchange for looking the other way when UFO crews mutilated cattle and abducted humans to conduct weird experiments on them.
So this is where you see that mix of what's plausible, and then there's always like a sprinkling of, okay, that sounds crazy. Now, was it Eisenhower or Nixon that was reportedly picked up somebody and drove there by themselves in a Cadillac? There's this story. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about.
There's a story of a U.S. president that was in Vegas with Secret Service, and it was it was a colonel in the military. And the story goes that they ditched Secret Service and was in this black Cadillac, or a black Cadillac came to pick up this colonel, and the colonel said oh, I knew I was being picked up to go to the secret meeting, but he walked up the car and it was Nixon driving. And
I think it was Nixon. Yeah. If we're wrong, I apologize. Yeah. It was either Nixon or Eisenhower.
Yeah. And basically they went to the base, and the colonel talks about how, and I could be getting all the the people wrong. It could have been like just a contractor, whatever. Just ignore that. But it was a president and a guy, and they needed to go there, and he wanted to show him that. And the story goes that they pulled up to the gate, and the MP guarding the gate like couldn't believe it was the president of the United States, and they just kind of like let him through. And that was the first time they were exposed to this secret area and aliens and all that other stuff. So there's some really cool stuff that's like you kind of hope you don't find out if it's not real, because it's neat to think about like this is happening, but then it's also like it's really scary that it's happening.
Yeah. No, I do remember hearing that story somewhere. I honestly can't remember the details, but it was either, Eisenhower or Nixon.
Okay.
I know it was a president, though. I remember this story.
While you're going through, I'm going to look it up. I'm going to be Jamie. Okay. I'm your Jamie for Joe Rogan.
All right, good. So moving on to the next conspiracy. This one I totally don't believe, because I'm a space junkie. I love everything, outer space and NASA. But a lot of people believe that the 1969 moon landing was faked and actually staged and filmed at Area 51. So, in a scenario proposed by a conspiracy writer...
Well, Mike, it was staged. It was staged film, and I know this. But the thing was that the actors in the movie demanded that it would be filmed on site, on location. That's why it cost so much.
Oh. So,
all right. I'll just move on. Yeah, I'm sorry. Just bad jokes. I got many more I won't tell.
Okay. So in the scenario proposed by conspiracy writer Bill Kaysing, NASA scientists discovered in the late 1960s that it would be impossible to send astronauts to the moon because of lethal radiation risks. So instead of going through an embarrassing shutdown of the costly Apollo program, officials designed an incredible hoax. They staged an actual rocket launch, but once the spacecraft was out of sight, the Apollo 11 crew was secretly transferred to a military aircraft and flown to a movie stage. A few days later, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin play-acted the lunar landing in front of cameras, and the phony event was then transmitted by NASA to millions of unsuspecting viewers. So, this one is pretty far out there. I think there's a lot of documentaries debunking the fake moon landings, and I'm sure we will get people emailing us mad that we're talking that about it.
I'm with you. The moon landing happened. The only credence I would give to this conspiracy is that we did go there, and there is this thing, and it made me think. I still think we're there, and I still think the footage is real. I'm just going to lay that out there. But the one closest thing that I said, okay, that sounds more legit, is that we did go there, we landed, but the actual film was destroyed, and they recreated it. Like, just to, because, and so, like, they were actually there, and they recreated it to say, like, hey, we still need to show something to the people. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing I can think of that makes sense. Yeah. But that kind of blows away too when you think about the timeline. Like, they did launch, and then it a few days later you're seeing this on video. So it's like, would they know ahead of time and they filmed ahead of time, or did they produce it at the same time? And that's where it's like, eh.
Yeah, and there's a lot of evidence that it happened because you have radio transmissions coming from the moon that other countries were following. Yeah. So you would have thought at the time, the Soviets, if they could expose the U.S. government was covering up a massive moon landing hoax. Yeah. I imagine they would have announced that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, especially
because that would be
Cold
tremendously
War,
devastating.
Yeah, peak Cold War. If we can discredit the United States in any way possible, they totally would have. So,
and you can point a telescope at the moon, and if you have a big enough telescope, you can actually see the landing sites for the Apollo missions, and you can see footprints on the ground. I mean, you can see the visual evidence that they were on the moon.
I think I read somewhere they bounced a laser off of the plaque or something like that because
they set up a scientific experiment that's still running to this day that it's like a reflector on the surface of the moon, and they shoot a laser at it from Earth, and then it goes up to the moon and bounces back, and they're able to track the distance between the moon and the Earth by this experiment. And I believe it's still it's still running to this day, and it was put up there by the Apollo astronauts. So there's a lot of evidence that says we did land on the moon, but there's always people, there's always going to be people that think it was faked. Sure. And they go into, the conspiracy goes into one of the reasons why they would say it was at Area 51 was because it would be too hard to do something like this in Hollywood and conceal it.
Yeah.
So they're like, we got to do this at a really top secret base where the public doesn't even know it exists. And so that's why they think it happened at Area 51. And the thing they go back into, though, there was hundreds of thousands of people working on the Apollo program. And it would have,
it would, if
that would be
the
mother of all hoaxes and conspiracies.
Yeah, to muzzle all of those people, scientists who don't care about, you assume they don't care about government relations, they care about the science, to say no, this is horseshit, we never went there. And I do have to jump in.
Okay.
I was not more wrong about the whole. So the only part I was right about with the president going to Area 51 was Richard Nixon, but it was Richard Nixon. It was in Florida, and it was with Jackie Gleason. So, and I'll just tell this. It's a neat story, but I was way off, not even close. So whoever was listening that was like grinding their teeth the whole time we were talking, you're having your moment now. So I was completely wrong.
There you go.
So Jackie Gleason's second wife, Beverly, told the story after they divorced that in an evening in 1973, Gleason returned to their Florida home like completely shaken. And after refusing to tell her why he was so upset, he confided in her earlier in the day that President Richard Nixon had arranged for him to visit Homestead Air Force Base in Florida. And this is where Nixon picked him up in a car and went to the Air Force Base and shocked the guard at the gate because it was the President of the United States. And upon his arrival, armed guards took Gleason to a building at a remote location site. And Gleason, who harbored an intense interest in UFOs, saw the embalmed bodies of 4 alien beings 2 feet long with small bald heads and big ears. And he told nothing of the circumstances and swore his wife to secrecy, but she discussed it freely after the divorce, and I think she put it in an unpublished book after that. So I wanted to get that fact correction out there before we got blown up and the entire show was just sidetracked by everyone yelling at us about how far off we were. So,
well, I remember the story. I didn't realize it was in Florida,
that's where I was like,
or I remember.
Yeah, exactly. I just remembered that a president went there in like a car without Secret Service, and that doesn't happen anymore.
So moving on to our next conspiracy, a lot of people think there is a 40-story underground bunker at Area 51. And obviously, if you've seen Independence Day, you know that in the movie they go underground into this massive bunker. So, you know, maybe that could be a visual of what these people are talking about. But the conspiracy goes, for decades, the government went to great lengths to conceal any evidence of what actually had been built inside Area 51, even blocking the release of the 1974 orbital photo of the area, taken by Skylab. And we mentioned that earlier. So, you can go on to Google Earth now, and there are pictures of Area 51 now. I think only recently were they allowed to publish those. But they talk about things like these scoot and hide buildings. So they have buildings that are designed so that aircraft can be slid underneath them and hiding when a satellite is scheduled to pass overhead. Others have claimed that most of the base itself is actually hidden from view, and that a massive underground facility with as many as 40 levels lies beneath the surface. They also go into that the subterranean infrastructure supposedly is protected at ground level by layers of security measures ranging from sensors that can detect both motion and scent of intruders to black helicopters equipped with stealth technology. The underground hangars that contain captured UFOs, according to Bob Lazar, were actually carved into the base of a mountain. Each had an entrance with a giant door with simulated sand texture to blend into the landscape. So I don't think there's probably a 40-level bunker under Area 51, but it's probably guaranteed that they have some kind of underground infrastructure there.
I mean, Disney World has an intense underground structure that connects every single one of the parks. Like, of course, Area 51 is underground.
Yeah. So
I'm looking at it on Google Earth right now.
Yeah.
And there's some really gnarly roads and buildings that, and it's 100% definitely.
Yeah. So So that while I don't think it's 40-story underground bunker, I think there are some probably underground structures. So moving on to our next conspiracy it's the home of the black helicopters. So in conspiracy lore, black helicopters are like the scariest thing you can see coming. It means that you're going to be scooped up by, unnamed government officials, and they're going to, wisp you away to some secret location. And a lot of people believe that these helicopters are manufactured at Area 51. And that they say some of these helicopters are used to conduct sinister missions, such as spraying clouds of toxic chemicals over suburban neighborhoods. There have even been people who've claimed they've been abducted by government black helicopters and turned over to flying saucer crews for examination, which suggests a link between extraterrestrials and human elites who are out to forge a one-world government and intermingle the two species. So you can see how, the government does have these black helicopters, and they're used by probably the CIA and other various, departments of the government. But, and like I said, that the stealth helicopter that was used in the Bin Laden raid was actually, I believe, developed at Area 51. So there might be, some shred of truth in some of the, conspiracy that, there's a lot of these black helicopters.
Exactly. Like you get the whole, well, they're probably not spraying neighborhoods, but
yeah. And it even goes into, they talk about the helicopters used in the Bin Laden raid are called MH-60 Blackhawks. And they actually were in development at Area 51 from the early 1990s. So, and there's other, we mentioned these planes earlier. The SR-71 is black. The F-117 is black. So they developed, most of the stealth technology back then was black. So, it really fuels people's imaginations that, there's these sinister black helicopters coming out of Area 51 scooping up people. And it makes for some really great science fiction. I don't think there's a lot of evidence that these helicopters are going out and, abducting people, but some people believe that.
Yeah.
So moving on to our next conspiracy is that there's a human-alien hybrid breeding program going on in Area 51. So this conspiracy is touched on multiple seasons in the X-Files, my go-to sci-fi show. And the conspiracy goes, though the U.S. government ostensibly controls Area 51, many conspiracy theorists suspect that the secret base has been co-opted by extraterrestrials and that the gray beings now are either sharing authority or even running the show. So people think that we are working with the aliens, or they've already landed and kind of said, we're running things here. And for some reason, they're trying to breed human-alien hybrids. And one suspicion is they've set up laboratories in which they're working, possibly alongside government scientists, in an effort to breed a race of human-alien hybrids. Theorists offer varying explanations for this project. An article on the website collectiveevolution.com, for example, explains that the goal is to create a cadre of fifth-column agents, future leaders of the New World Order, who look exactly like the rest of us but secretly possess mental and psychic capabilities and social cohesion of the aliens. So
like
you
Elon
can kind of
Musk?
see how, yeah, right. You can kind of see how all of these conspiracies kind of tie together.
Oh yeah.
It's either the one world government or we're working alongside the aliens, or so this is an interesting theory that would explain why they would try to do it. They want to breed humans that look like us, but have these amazing, powers to manipulate people's minds. And, yeah, I don't know. The theory goes on though. It gets a little creeper. They say that alien human hybrids who are under alien control through some sort of electronic implants are being created as a supply of organs that the extraterrestrials need to replenish their own bodies. So this kind of is like it's not the Matrix, but I always picture that scene where Neo wakes up and he's, surrounded by millions of other humans that are like asleep in pods.
Well, that's funny that I mentioned Elon Musk, because that's kind of his whole, like, he is very certain that we are all in a simulation now. And one of the and what's funny is like it's like haha, yeah, hilarious. And then when you think about it, because like I have an Oculus headset and I do VR, and it's like you think about video games. We went from Pong like 40 years ago to now I can put on this headset and run around in this world that's really freaking realistic. Like to the point where like when you take it off, your arms just feel weird because it's tricked your brain into thinking you're in there. So what is a simulation like that going to look like in another 50 years?
Or 1,000 years.
Exactly. Like could this is where you get into that whole thing. Like, could we be like doing, like Dwight in The Office, Second Life? Like, are we just in a Second Life right now and we think it's the real thing? And that's where that whole theory comes from, where it's just like, wow, we're just in a computer right now and we have no idea what the real outside world is. That's that red pill moment. Like, do we want to wake up or do we want to stay in this crazy world? So and that's where there's like, okay, there's a nugget of I could actually, on its face, you go, oh, okay, yeah, we're in a computer simulation, whatever. But then you start thinking about our technological advancement and timeline of human history and where we are now, and it's like, oh crap, yeah, in like 100 years, like my consciousness could potentially be, and they just did an Amazon show on this called Upload. Like my consciousness could potentially be downloaded and put into a computer where, as far as I'm concerned, it's my consciousness and my brain is me. Like I could be living permanently somewhere and not even realize it.
Yeah. Well, so maybe this conspiracy is we're all asleep in a simulation and really we're just bred to supply organs to extraterrestrials.
Yeah,
so
who knows?
Who knows? But a wild theory and great movie, The Matrix, if you haven't seen it. The Matrix 2 and 3, not so great, but the first one was awesome. So moving on to our 9th conspiracy is that weather manipulation weapons are being tested at Area 51. Now, this one is not as far out as you think.
Oh, that's real. They seed.
They've tried different technologies in the past. So, I guess the conspiracy theory may spring from an actual truth. According to the National Science Foundation, the U.S. military did actually engage in Project Cirrus, a research effort in the late 1940s and early 1950s to find a way to modify clouds and use rain, or perhaps the lack of rain, as a weapon. Between 1962 and 1983, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, ran a project called Project Storm Fury, in which scientists tried to use cloud seeding to slow hurricane winds without much success. So while there's no evidence that, this research continues at Area 51, weather modification, it sounds like a sinister thing that, governments would try to develop. Can you imagine if you were at war with somebody and you could just change their weather to put them into like a massive drought and kill all their crops?
Yeah.
I mean, it would be a crazy weapon to use.
That's terrifying. Yeah,
or to flood them out, maybe so much rain that their whole country floods.
Yeah,
I mean,
my hope is that we don't figure out how to do that.
Yeah, so this conspiracy theory thinks that, Area 51 is used to develop these sinister weapons. And I mean, there's other, not just weather manipulation, but there's a lot of people that think contrails are secretly chemicals to control people.
Yeah, when that's very explainable by science.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's another interesting theory, and I think this one out of all of them is kind of based a little in reality, since the government actually has experimented with this kind of technology in the past with, little success that they've publicly announced. Who knows what they've worked on that's still classified, but either way, an interesting theory. Moving on to our final theory, and this one is the most probably logical, is nothing at all. So, yeah. So the theory basically goes that the government kind of purposefully puts out, bogus information and, things to throw people off the trail, and that Area 51 is just a base like any other Air Force base that they made super top secret to draw interest away from maybe other more top secret sites. So
Which if you think about like Cold War tactics at that time, makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, we legitimately had an operation when we were in the Cold War that they were going to dump large size condoms on Russia, but label them medium.
Oh, no.
I'm not even kidding. You can look this up. They were gonna like airdrop a bunch of condoms that were actually large size, but label them medium size to make the troops think that our troops were larger. So like they had all these things like where they wanted to do mental games with other countries. So like if you're gonna like try and keep that going, you're gonna say like, yeah, we're in contact with aliens, but we're gonna pretend like we're not doing it.
Yeah.
Like Bob, like think about this. What if Bob Lazar is really an agent?
Just a plant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's like he's a really good at it. And he's like, all right, the rest of my life, I'm going to be this crazy conspiracy theorist to keep this narrative going. Like that would be gnarly. So that
it could be.
Then the irony of that is the conspiracy theory of nothing at all is actually a very large conspiracy theory of something.
Yeah. Well, it goes. So a British journalist and filmmaker, Mark Pilkington, apologize if I got the name wrong, has argued that the entire UFO believer subculture has been the victim of an elaborate, ongoing propaganda operation. He says, over the years, the U.S. Air Force and the intelligence community quietly have worked to spread the belief that UFOs have crashed on American soil and that the government has been concealing and stockpiling advanced alien technology. It was all intended to divert attention away from the actual experimental spy aircraft and other gadgetry that the government was developing. The Air Force, he says, collected reports of UFO sightings and then compared them to the schedule of U-2 spy planes in order to gauge whether the aircraft was visible to ground observers. So that seems like a, very plausible theory that the government has been planning all this kind of misinformation, definitely during the Cold War, to kind of throw people off the trail of, actual legitimate aircraft they're developing.
100%.
So,
well, and I think it's not to be discounted that this year, the government officially released video and acknowledgement of UFOs. Another thing that kind of just went by and no one made a huge deal about that I kind of freaked out about. I'm like, this is just like when they said Area 51 exists, like, they're UFOs for real.
Yeah.
Like, they're not saying they're alien in nature, but they're saying like, yeah, we have video of stuff we don't understand. And they're supposed to understand that. That's the whole point of it, and they don't.
I keep telling people, I said, this has been such a crazy year. I said July, is probably going to be an alien invasion.
Yeah.
So maybe they were priming the pump.
Yes.
So that is really kind of the top 10 of conspiracies for Area 51. There's some other, obviously a lot of other conspiracy theories, such as they're developing energy weapons there and future transportation. There's a really funny one out there that Area 51 is the center hub for this massive underground rail system across America.
Jeez.
So yeah, it's Area 51 is,
Well, and and this doesn't necessarily tie to Area 51, but if our listeners haven't yet, I'm sure you have, Mike, but this is one of those. It was one of those Joe Rogan shows that really changed a lot of my perspective on this type of stuff and made me, I'd say, a deeper conspiracy theorist. It was the one where he had Alex Jones on, and who's the other guy, the flat earther?
Oh,
which I don't. It'll hit me.
I
don't believe in flat Earth at all, by the way, but that show was actually incredible because I've always looked at Alex Jones as completely insane. I have, just like most people do. And after watching the Rogan podcast, it made me really think that Alex Jones is a lot more sane than I thought, which was scary as hell to me because and what you see, I suggest that you watch it on YouTube. Don't listen to it. Watch it because he's going nuts. He's going crazy. He's got all this energy. And they're talking about DMT and the use of psychedelics to communicate with interstellar beings and the things that the government's doing. And what I learned about Alex Jones through having Joe Rogan moderate was incredible. And that's the difference. I think when Alex Jones is on his own show, he just goes nuts and it sounds like the ranting is of an insane man. But you have a guy like Joe Rogan who's a great interviewer because he interviews, politically left, right, conservative, liberal, everybody. And he's I think the irony is he's a goofy dude. He's one of the best interviewers of our time because he keeps an even keel and literally tries to go along with whoever he has on, even if it's people he doesn't like or doesn't agree with, and he gives a good interview. So he says he's friends with Alex Jones, and he does this interview where Alex is ranting and raving. He slows him down and stops it. And then he's having Jamie fact check all the stuff he's saying because he's just spewing out stuff. And what they find out, and like Joe Rogan starts getting a little creeped out, is that most of the stuff Alex Jones is spewing out that sounds crazy is extremely verifiable, real things that happened.
Yeah.
And you start learning about Alex Jones's past and about how his dad worked for the Department of Defense and that he was privy to some of this top secret stuff. And then if you look at his journalistic history, they have those secretive dinners in the Redwoods where it's like presidents go to. Like Alex Jones snuck into that somehow. He got into it. So like this guy, it started turning my thought process of Alex Jones of lesson to this guy's just an insane lunatic to this guy is an insane lunatic because of the information he knows. And how could you not be insane after knowing these things and talking about them and having people call you crazy only to have it then declassified later? And we're talking about, and he talks about these guys who would go into South America in this specific spot in South America, and they would take high levels of like DMT and other psychedelics and would have communications with interstellar beings that they're so advanced, they're on basically this other plane. And it's where we got the technology that is being worked on in Area 51 and other hidden bases. And where it sounds insane until, again, you look at our timeline of technological advancement. We went from hunter-gatherer to advanced microchip silicon technology in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And you think about like, okay, yeah, it is explained by math, but how do you make that leap when people have been around for thousands and thousands of years and they, Graham Norton, I think it's Graham Norton, and it's this guy, Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson, two guys that talk about generational and how basically our whole history of human evolution is completely wrong, and talk about cataclysmic events and talk about, if you think about like the stuff in your house right now, and if you gave it 10,000 years, what would be left? The stuff made of stone, the stuff made of things that can survive. And the idea of there's this possible that humans have been around for a lot longer on this planet than we had thought, but there have been these cataclysmic events that have essentially erased this technological series and brought us back to the Stone Age. You always hear about like, oh, if we go to nuclear war, we're back to the Stone Age. And the idea is that almost happened. And now you have guys like Alex Jones who are taking drugs, but they're like, you have Chinese working on animal-human hybrids. There's all this crazy stuff because it sounds like I'm ranting and going crazy. But if you listen to it and then you go look in Scientific American, like legitimate scientific documents, declassified government documents that are not just made up by crazy people like Alex Jones, it's real stuff saying that, yes, indeed, we did work on animal-human hybrids and Chinese are working on that and they're called Chimera. And yes, we did have people go to South America and do these DMT trips, and out of it, we have these scientists go down there, and now we come out of that with a nuclear weapon. We come out of that with insane silicon technology, like you think about like the Intel chipsets, things like that, like stuff that just happened relatively quickly is nuts.
You must have been watching some Ancient Aliens recently.
Dude, I watch all that stuff. That's why I say like I'm an extremely skeptical person, and I'm the type of person that's like, all right, that sounds insane. Like, on its face, I typically don't believe conspiracy theories on their face. I don't. My brain doesn't want to. But then when you start giving me facts, and again, there's always like, okay, that makes sense, that makes sense. No, that's crazy. Get that away from me. So, like, I try and keep an even keel on this, but there is too many people in too many different places saying the same thing that makes you start wondering about, like, again, like the shadow government stuff. Like, there's a lot more going on than we know about. And that's where I think like your last theory of like there's nothing, that's definitely wrong, I think. I know that is that's a common theory of people like, oh, that's just a joke. But when you listen to these people, and I even try, like, I think Alex Jones is crazy. I still try to listen to what he's saying. Because if you outright ignore everybody, you're not going to learn anything. Whereas you have to take like an Alex Jones with a grain of salt. He says a lot of crazy crap. But a lot of it's verifiable, which is scary. And then you look at his past.
I did listen to that episode of Joe Rogan's podcast, and it's an interesting one to say the least. Definitely worth checking out.
It's like 4 hours of Alex Jones.
It's long.
It's 4.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you can tolerate that, but like I would say, if anything else, you could hate Alex Jones more than anything in your entire life if you can put that aside and ignore because they do talk about politics. Like, ignore the politics stuff and just listen to him about the stories of his father, because his father did work for the Department of Defense and had high clearance, and he did sneak into a lot of these secret societies. That did happen. Yeah. It's completely verifiable. And listen to the stuff he talks about, and then listen to Joe Rogan does a great job of moderating and questioning it. Because Joe Rogan will be like, that sounds insane. Explain that. Yeah. He'll stop him. He'll be like, that sounds crazy. He's not afraid to do it. And then he'll have Jamie searching this stuff at the same time, and like, holy crap, here's a real document that's been declassified that says exactly what you just talked about. And you start looking at Alex Jones almost like this guy on 80 that has got ADD that just is spewing out crazy data that's factual. But he doesn't train it together. That's what makes him sound insane. He just kind of says things and doesn't necessarily connect it, but it's not necessarily fake either. And it's kind of terrifying and super interesting at the same time. Yeah.
Well, on that note, Joe.
Yeah, I know. I could go on for 4 hours on that, so I'm going to stop there.
These were a lot of really cool conspiracies. If anyone listening has additional conspiracies or wants to make a comment on them, just follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. We're on all of them. Like I said in the beginning, we're going to be off for a few months on our summer break, but we will be back in the fall with a lot of new episodes. So
we appreciate all of you, our loyal listeners, as Mike said, our sponsors that keep the show going. And remember, when enjoying the beauty of Area 51 and working with aliens, always remember to leave no trace.
And to trust no one.
Trust no one. Thanks. We'll see you guys next season.